Now, I don't know who's in my chat who's ever heard of the model. I'm going to say this very carefully to ensure that this segment remains monetized. This model named Rebecca Goodwin. Everyone come across this model called Rebecca Goodwin before? She's incredibly famous on TikTok. She makes £100,000 every month on a certain website. Only Friends, we'll call it, for monetization purposes. £100,000 a month on this particular website. Very, very famous and popular, huge star across loads of different social media platforms. She actually has a YouTube channel of her own now, where you can see into her life, and she's got some amount of subscribers. She gets some views, obviously pales in comparison to the absolute stacks that she makes on the certain website that I mentioned at the start of this segment. She is diversifying her portfolio. She was originally not doing anything else with regards to her investment as far as I was aware, but she's becoming a landlord. Now, we all know how this stream feels about landlords. I would usually take this story and I would instantly castigate her for wanting to get into something which is as materially bad as landlordism. But I do have some reservations. So let's look at this tweet. Ball is now rolling with my affordable housing scheme. My plan is to buy 8 properties outright and rent them out to low-income families. One house I'll be renting is a 3-storey, 4-bedroom, 3-bathroom house with off-road parking for 2 cars, fully furnished for £650 a month. Now, let's analyse this. If we're looking at this purely from a utilitarian basis, do I think that it is overall positive utility for anyone to be a landlord? Obviously not. But let's be real about the actual situation that's going on here. Is there ever going to be anybody who is a low-income family who's going to buy this property? No. Are they going to get a mortgage for this property? No. Would they most likely be renting somewhere else? Yes. Would they be renting for more than this amount of money? Yes. But I still don't think it's quite justified. I think, basically, it's far less negative utility than any other landlord would be engaging in. And it's going to give access to this property that other people wouldn't be getting. So the amount of utility has increased from what otherwise would be the situation where the only other person that would own this property would be an incredibly rich person who would be able to afford this because she is incredibly rich, or would be leased out to somebody so essentially as a luxury house to be able to rent. No one who would otherwise would be on the breadline, which to be fair is what £650 a month worth of rent would be anywhere near affording this property and would almost certainly be left in the rest of the rental market. Unfortunately, she's not told us where the properties are going to be located. So, I'm torn because she does admit in this thread that she is doing it mostly for profit. It's not really some kind of philanthropic venture that she's going on here. She's doing it for profit, and she admits that she's doing it for profit, right? So if we look at the future tweets, because buying them outright means I can charge what I want for rent without tenants paying my mortgage, and me having to add more onto that to make any profit. Now I get 100% of the profit, rent is affordable, and my kids each get 4 houses while I pop my clogs. So she's already admitting that she's making profit out of this, so she is using the leverage of the capital that she has to essentially be paid free money for that leverage as a rich person from poor people. So she's already admitting that she's engaging in some amount of negative utility off of this. And she's also doing it so that after all of this, she just ends up with an appreciated asset that she's made rental income off of, that she's then going to give to her children to inherit. So yeah, those families won't be able to rent there anymore. I mean, obviously, this is way down the line, but there won't be people renting there anymore. But the kids will be living in those houses as owner-occupiers. They won't be renting elsewhere. So they're not going to the problem is, how do we know that her kids aren't going to be landlords? But at the moment, it's still rental income. That's still bad, right? That's still money that's being paid from a poor person who can't get a house anywhere else to her for the privilege of existing in a house. When she could, right? If we're going to be supererogatory about all of this, she could have taken all of this money, started up housing cooperatives. She could be doing this as rent to own, but we know that she's not because she wants to pass down these houses to her kids, right? She could actually be doing rent to own, which would be actually not supererogatory. That would be positive utility in the clearest sense, with no further expectation of someone to be able to maximizing this stuff. She should be doing rent to own to make this morally justifiable, in my opinion. but she's not doing that. She wants to make a profit. She wants to be able to have an appreciating asset. She wants to pass something down to her kids. It is like openly, right? At least appreciate her honesty. It is openly being done specifically for the pursuit of profit. And she says in another tweet here, I'm doing it to invest in my kids' futures. It's a side hustle for her. So she's already admitted that she's not doing this from some kind of philanthropic venture. It's also gonna be partly about exposure, because her already existing business venture that she's on this certain illicit website, the main currency is exposure, right? The main currency on these websites is ensuring that you stand out from the pack, that people will subscribe to you specifically. Obviously, how attractive you are and all that kind of stuff will play into this. But if people don't know who you are, they can't Google you, they can't find you, there's no discoverability on this website. So this is also advertising, right? It's advertising that she makes money from. So it's not all this big philanthropic venture, and she admits as much. And to be fair, it looks really nice. This does look like a really, really nice house to live in, and it's an absolute steal. So basically what I'm saying here is that she is going to be a landlord, which is bad, but she is going to be the least bad landlord in the country, basically. And that's the other thing, is will the low rent be guaranteed in perpetuity? Will she be increasing the rent as market conditions increase? We don't know. Is she going to Section 21 these people? Is she going to be all the rest of her landlord stuff that she's going to be engaging in? Is this all going to be ethical as well? Obviously not, right? You can't, or at least you cannot guarantee it. You're absolutely right, Scribby. It is moral self-indulgence, and it is obviously something that she can promote. In fact, because it's going to go into a purchase of a property, essentially what she was going to be able to do then, instead of paying out taxation in the form of earned income through being a business owner with regards to her existing business, her existing status as an independent contractor of the illicit website in that I mentioned previously, she will now also be getting taxed upon a different kind of income, which is taxed differently in the form of rental income. So she also will be using this, especially as she's making huge down payments on these houses to be able to acquire an asset that she will then only pay stamp duty on if she then sells for profit, or capital gains on if she sells for profit. Means that her overall tax bill is going to be lower. So she's also she's also minimizing her tax outgoings by making this investment, rather than her end of year portfolio being in a certain amount of income when she goes down to the tax man at the end of the day. So not only is she getting exposure out of this, not only is she engaging in moral self-indulgence, not only is she being a bloody landlord at the end of the day and making rental money out of poor people, she's also using it to dodge taxes too. So again, you're absolutely right. This is another Mr. Beast situation where people will look at something, and I'm not saying that there's not positive utility here. There is some amount of positive utility in that's happening here. In that there are some people who will otherwise be renting out somewhere more expensive and less bad, and will now be paying far less in rent and getting a much nicer place to live. And the problem is that the system that we have is set up in such a way that the ways of doing this in a far more ethical manner are disincentivized. But of course, she doesn't really care, because she wants to make money off of this stuff, wants to leave her kids' houses at the end of the day. Because nothing is stopping her. There's nothing stopping her buying these houses to then pass on to her kids, and then only charging the people who live there for insurance and maintenance, and maybe into a pot to ensure that there is something left over there as a deposit for when these people leave, right? The only reason that she has to charge these people rent is because she wants to make money off poor people. And it doesn't guarantee these people rental security either, because we don't know what kind of landlord that she's going to be. And she could be spending all of this money, if she genuinely cared about affordable housing, and rather than just contributing to a system of landlordism, why is she not doing rent to own? Why is she not doing a housing cooperative? Because again, she's already admitted this is about financial speculation. It's about inheritance. It's about additional income for her. She's already admitted that she's doing this for profit, not doing it out of the goodness of her heart. But because she is doing it in the most morally justifiable way that she can do, optically, it's good for her business and it's good for her exposure and it's good for her overall, the way that she's overall viewed as far as society is concerned. So I think people who are looking at this as some kind of altruistic thing that she's doing are living in a fantasy world, quite frankly. And she could just do this for free and just charge people for maintenance and insurance. And again, all she's contributing to is taking houses off the market that other people could be owning. Because not only, I'm saying, obviously, I understand that low-income families wouldn't really be owning these houses, to be fair, but there are some people who are paying high amounts in rent anyway to live in similar places who could then, were there more houses on the market to buy, reducing house prices, be able to buy as someone else who wouldn't be able to get on the property ladder does so because people have vacated those houses to move into the nicer houses that have become on the market. Obviously, that's a very specific way of looking at the market, but overall the market dynamics would change if these places were on the market for people to buy as owner-occupiers than they would be as all of these houses sitting as part of her portfolio as a landlord. So that is altering how the market works. And it's not going to change the rental market as far as market pricing signals are concerned, because she's only buying 8 properties or whatever it is. Whereas if she genuinely really cares about fixing the cost of living crisis, not only would she be ensuring that these properties were either cooperative or rent-to-own, she'd also be using her platform to be able to advocate for better affordable housing programs, more house building, all this kind of stuff. She's not doing that. She's not even addressing the root cause of this through what she's doing. Because through what she's doing, she is framing this just like Mr. Beast would, by saying that, by not overtly stating, but putting the point across to people that these problems are not a fault of the system. They can just be solved by very rich people being charitable, being philanthropic, which is what we were talking about beforehand by looking at Zizek's liberal communism essay, where these people will seek to fix the broken system by making it look like the system can be fixed from the inside when it can't, despite the fact that they are benefactors from the system. Although, to be fair, given her current profession, she isn't really a benefactor of the system, but she is now that she's becoming a landlord. And because of neoliberalism, as MCH rightly points out in chat, because we're so atomized, we're so used to, and we're so indoctrinated into and brainwashed into this mindset where greed is seen as somehow being good, or has been seen for a very long time. Luckily, people's minds are changing, especially in younger generations. The bar as what is considered altruistic is far lower than it ever used to be. Like, where we suddenly view altruism as being not engaging in the worst amount of human greed possible, and somehow reining that back in, having some kind of moral conscience, is now seen as like, otherworldly altruism, where it really shouldn't need to be. It only is looked in that way in comparison to the remainder of society that's had their brains broken by 4 decades of neoliberal policy. She's not taking out loans, though, Scribby. She's buying them all in cash because she's that rich. She has so much money, she's literally just buying a house in cash. Because if she was just saying, I'm buying my kids' houses and they can live in them and be owner-occupiers, I guess that'll be good, actually, because there would be fewer people having to rent if the kids were owner-occupiers of these houses, right? But because she's saying, well, actually, no, I don't want them to be owner-occupiers. I want to make rental money until I depart the mortal realm. And then once I can no longer make rental income, only then will I pass it on to them, because she wants a side hustle to make more money. Then passing it off as altruism really does get rub me up the wrong way. There's an article on Lad Bible, which we can read and have a look. A famous content creator has promised to use her earnings to help low-income families find shelter. And again, this is the framing, right? She's already admitted on her Twitter that she's doing it for profit and she's doing it as a side hustle. Yet this article has already started from Lad Bible, the most reputable news sources, obviously, saying that she's using it to help low-income families find shelter when she's not doing it for that. She's doing it for profit. Has vowed to purchase houses and rent them out to families struggling amid the cost of living crisis. The 28-year-old who earns £100,000 a month announced her affordable housing scheme via Twitter. She makes enough profit on the existing website. She has no mortgage, her rent payment's 100% profit, except maintenance and insurance. And then even the article is admitting that she's not doing this for altruistic nature. She's doing it to make more money as a side hustle for her kids' futures. Simple as that, right? This is well and truly a passion project for the star, who previously revealed that she and her children were forced to live off food stamps before her career took off. She's a single mother and told The Independent that she struggled to provide for her daughters, now aged 11 and 4. She revealed that they would survive on 6 bags of food provided by voucher stamps each week. It was then that the woman decided to turn to this website as a means of supporting her children. In 10 days, she made 1,600 quid on the sub-based platform. And then shortly after, the two began making £10,000, which claimed to a staggering £100,000 per month. I never earned so much than a month before. Now I've been able to buy a house and a Porsche. Just before you started, in 15 grand of debt and got a debt relief order. And that's the thing, right? Is that she even this comes from this background. And again, it's this, and I think I fully believe that heart of heart she's a good and moral person. But once you get to that level of wealth, you suddenly forget about what put you in the place where you were, when you weren't wealthy to begin with, and you forget about the systemic nature at play, right? And you get this survivorship bias. We say, well, I made it, so there mustn't be too much wrong with the system. So if I can essentially give back, then suddenly that'll fix the systemic problems at play. But it doesn't do that at all. It really doesn't. Now, what will happen if the tenants fall behind on rent? What if she decides to sell up? What if she changes her mind on the affordable housing plan? I'm not saying that she will, but she could. And why is she, of course, making rental income from poor people using her leverage as a rich person, which is essentially what that does. Now, yeah, she's in a different class now. Her class interests have changed, and so she's leveraging her class interests in a different fashion than she would have done previously. Let's have a look at this Independent article as well. That describes what she was living in, right? Single mother living off food stamps, struggling to feed 2 daughters, with what we've heard previously. And because the thing is, again, I think that she really genuinely believes she's doing something good for these people, and I see why she thinks that. But we've got to think about the landlord-tenant relationship and how genuinely parasitic it is. And how if she truly believed in fixing the system to make life better, for what position she would be in, because unless she was to get some random wealthy benefactor coming and saying, I'm going to relieve your housing struggles because I'm a benevolent millionaire, and if she'd not started her current business venture, she would still be in the same position that she would currently be in, and would still be not affording bills and huge mountains of debt. That's the problem. That's the big problem of all of this. If she genuinely truly cared about fixing these problems from the base up, she would use all of this money that she has and she doesn't need, right? Once you're earning £100,000 a month, you really don't need all that money, to be quite frank. She's making it the way she's making her initial money, to be fair, is in an incredibly justifiable way. It's not exploitative at all. Actually, the people who are doing the exploiting, quite frankly, are the actual website, who take 20% of what money she earns as a gigantic cut for the incredibly huge amounts of work they do being a server. Because that's all that the hosting website does. They all do is pay for a server and then pay for like the legal implications of what it does by hosting that material. That's it. That's all they do, and they take 20% of a cut of that. So they're the real parasite in the initial relationship. But now she's got all this money, to then use that to then leverage it against poor people to make even more money off of them, and then market it as some kind of benevolent act. It's not true. That's not what it is. And she could. Right, she could absolutely help towards fixing these problems by creating alternative solutions like rent to own, for example, which wouldn't be parasitic, because at the end of the day, the people who are paying rent are not spaffing away money on nothing. They're buying into future equity and whatever in the property if they go through the entire rent-to-own process. She could be setting up housing cooperatives to be able to break the housing sector that is causing the problems that she was previously a victim of before she had a current lucrative career. But she's not doing that. She's not doing that. Instead, she is leveraging her financial position to be able to make additional money as what she calls herself, and as admitted to in the original article, a side hustle. And she's so wealthy, like she's buying like 4-bed houses outright and is going to buy 8 more outright. Anyone upwardly mobile is liable to change their morals to fit their circumstance. 100%, 100%. And that's the thing. Like, I think that's why it's important to frame this, that the people who she will be renting to in future have had their circumstances made better. Their circumstances have improved from where they were before. But the problems that they have are not going to go away. The problems that they have are not going to go away just because they're paying a little bit less rent. They got a nice house, great, fantastic, I'm really happy for them. But the fundamental problem that they have is not being able to get on the housing ladder themselves because people are buying more houses than they need. And this is what this model is doing. She is buying more houses than she needs to leverage her financial position to make additional money that she is using to further enrich herself at the expense of others. And that's the long and short of it. And that overshadows the fact that it's affordable. Because at the end of the day, as I mentioned before, the landlord-tenant relationship is 100% parasitic. And you will not get around that. So if you're watching Ms. Goodwin, first of all, love your content, love your work. Big fan. But second of all, please think about the alternatives and why the system is bad and how you are contributing to that system and how you're optically contributing to that system too. Because now we suddenly believe that there can be some future benevolent landlord who's going to fix all of the issues with that over-marketized housing sector where people are hoarding houses that they don't need to be able to leverage for future profits, which is the real center of this issue. And that is why we're in the position where people cannot afford their rent. It's not because landlords are just choosing to put up prices. It's because over-marketized houses incentivize this behavior to begin with, and you're not solving that problem by doing what other landlords are doing, which is buying more houses than they need, creating artificial scarcity in the housing market where the additional leverage gets passed on in additional costs for poor people, because that is why these people cannot afford housing to begin with, and you are not helping overall systemically by contributing to that by hoarding additional houses. It's as simple as that.